Hey guys, welcome to another project. What you're looking at here is my work laptop. Nothing special. It's probably about 6 years old. It works very well for what I need. It's not the greatest laptop. It's an old laptop, like I said. It's been modified with memory and solid state drive. But like I said, it's nothing special. For what I do, I'm an IT tech. I don't need high processing power to do my job. I just need to make sure everybody else's laptops and equipment and all that are up to spec. So for what I do, I don't need anything. I surf the web, man. I watch YouTube videos. So anyway, but this thing is old and boring. And actually, in my group, I probably got the oldest one. And when we go in and do work and stuff like that, everybody sitting around with their laptops. I got stickers and people kind of make fun of me, but like, again, it does what I need it to do. The company should be happy because I haven't asked them for a new one, where everybody else has got very expensive new ones. I've got this, so maybe they should be a little happy. Anyway, what I want to do is I want to make this more interesting. So I decided I'm going to paint the lid of this. I want to turn this into something a little bit more me. I don't want to make it hippie-like and put peace signs all over it, but I'm going to theme it out World War II nose art style. Okay, so we started with my laptop. It's an HP ProBook 6560B series. So like I said, it's as old as dirt, but it does what I need to do. So first thing we do is I wiped it off with some isopropyl alcohol, get it nice and clean, get rid of the coffee stains on the lid. I used some steel wool, okay, and I scratched the entire surface, which light scratches that'll be filled in with the paint, but just enough scratching of the entire surface to allow the paint to stick to it. Then I set up and prepped it to make a panel line. That's what I'm doing here, and this panel line is going to act as a reference point also, so I can base the rest of the illustration off of that line and have it straight and not going at a crooked angle. So once I had this taped in spot, what I did is I took my once I had that in place, I took my Tamiya rescriber tool and scribed a panel line across the magnesium case. Took a little bit of effort, a lot more effort than it does for styrene, but it worked. Then after I scribed the line, what I did is I had a pattern that I found online, and what it had was also 2 rows of rivets in the drawing. So we're going to have 2 rows coming across this way and this way. I marked them off with pencil, and then using wiggly eyes, which I got from Hobby Lobby. These are real small ones. And I went and I glued them in place. I want them to go on the bare cover first. I don't want to paint them over top of any primer or any glue because they'll have a tendency to fall off. They won't stick. All right. Now, you might say these are a little over the top and very large compared to what the real rivets were, but that's okay. This isn't supposed to be a real B-17 nose. It is just going to be a representation, a tribute to it. So I think even though they're a little oversized, it adds and gives the concept that I'm going for in this build. Okay, so using my ruler, I put them about 3/4 of an inch apart and glued them in place with the crazy glue until I came out with this, and that's how they look now. So, again, it looks kind of silly, but it definitely makes the laptop look more industrial right here and there. I mean, I could have left it just like that and it would be something different. Okay. After we're done with this, we went on to priming. It's just more of a close-up of the googly eyes, and then the panel line that we did. You can see it up here. Okay. Then what I wanted to do before I actually did any painting or any priming whatsoever, I needed to wrap the entire laptop up so I didn't get any spray paint on the insides of it or anywhere I didn't want to. So using the Reynolds plastic wrap and lots of tape, we set forth and entombed our laptop. You can see here, made sure we didn't get anything on the keyboards or anything. Heavily taped this area so the paint didn't bleed through the hinges on the other side and end up all over the surface here. And then after priming, these are the two primary colors we're going to be using. We're going to be using the flat gold gray for the underside of a B-17, they're gray, and then we're going to use the flat olive drab, okay? So we covered the entire laptop in olive drab, took about 2 coats to do, all right? Came out looking pretty good. Of course, it transforms those rivets. Now they're no longer silly looking googly eyes. And they actually look like rivets, albeit they're kind of large, but still, they're rivets and you get the idea. Next, I put down silly putty. The silly putty is going to be the demarcation line for the gray. And the reason I use this as opposed to tape is I didn't want a harsh, solid line. I wanted a wavy line and I wanted it to do a fade. So using this gives me that ability to have a little bit of a fade going into the next color. Okay, after we had that in place, we took the flat gold gray and we painted on the lower half. Again, before we painted it though, I wrapped the top half in more plastic wrap. This way I wouldn't get any overspray, and then we phased that in and it feathered into the green. Now this is the picture I'm using as a guide to what I'm trying to do. Okay, I enlarged it and it lays on the laptop very well, and I can use this as a guide to placing the letters and so forth. Also, if you notice here, for those that are very detail oriented, you can see here the P is not original to what was on the aircraft. It had a bigger swoop on it, and I'll get onto that later. And here, what I did is I took I took that photo that you just saw, and I cut out the letters and I used them as a template, and it's cut out onto 100-pound paper, stuff I use for building paper models. This way it has some rigidity to it. And I put the letters in place the way I wanted them. I just made some adjustments to the spacing and everything and drew them out with pencil. If you look at the right angle, you could see that they're all written in pencil. Then I went to my Sharpie paint pen and we lined out the letters, so now we have what we need. Now from here I was going to just paint it red on the inside, but I realized that where the red would overlap, inevitably would overlap the white, it would probably cast a different shade, and I didn't want that. So what I did is I ended up going back with this and I filled in all of it with white. Okay, this way whatever color the red was on, whether it went where I didn't or did want it, it would always have the same shade and it would look better. This is about 2 coats of white. Doesn't have to be perfect because the red is going to be over top, but this is the basics of it. Okay, and as you can see here, I added the bomb markings, or the mission markings is really what these are. Each bomb indicates a mission. Again, if you were to try to be exact in a rivet counter, you're going to say, well, they shouldn't even be here on that close to the nose art, but this is just a tribute piece. It's not really exact for the bomber, and I just thought it would add more depth, definition, and points of interest to the build to have them incorporated in it. Okay, just another picture of the bombs put in place. Now, after that was all dry, I broke out some craft acrylic paints. We used medium yellow for the bombs, and we're going to use the red for the letters for Ye Olde Pub. Here you can see the P. That's what I had to do for it. It didn't have the swoop, it cut short, so I had to cut the swoop using some references online. I made some alterations in this and down here at the bottom also, and that's the actual P that I used on the in the lettering. So after a little bit of working, we've got about 2 or 3 coats of red. I chose to do this by hand. It would have been a better coverage if I took the time and taped all this off and spray painted it, but the reality of it is the aircraft, they didn't have it spray painted on. They were all done by hand. So as a tribute to that, I wanted to do the same thing. So you do see paint marks, you see some imperfections and everything, but it's more reminiscent to the real aircraft. So that's why I chose to do that by hand. This spot here that I used dark gray on. I'll explain what that is in a minute. Okay, so one more point of interest is going to be bullet holes. That's what we're doing next. What I did is I took my Dremel with the special tip that I had on it and proceeded to make bullet holes. I had to be real careful with this when I was making these. You can see them here, here. And that is because I needed to drill into the cover to get that depth for the points of interest that I wanted. At the same time, I didn't want to poke through the cover and damage the LCD behind it or any of the wirings, because it's still a functioning laptop. This isn't going to be just sitting on my wall. This is functional art, so to speak. Then what I did is I took some Tamiya smoke and I put a little dab in each of the bullet holes and I let it sit. Then what I did next is I took some silver paint and I made chip marks around each of the bullet holes. Let that dry. After that was done, I took a little bit of Tamiya smoke and put a drop in each of the holes. And I let it sit for a couple minutes. Then with a brush, I came back and I made it streaks across it just to add some dirt and more points of interest to the bullet holes, make them stand out a little bit more. Okay, now, the next piece I want to do is I want to make windows. Okay, now I didn't want to just paint the windows on there because I just didn't think it would give it enough depth, or it wouldn't give the depth that I was looking for. So what I did is I took this cover that I got from a dollar store takeout tray. They sell these at the dollar store. You know, you put your food in it in the aluminum containers, you cover it, and you go on your way to your party. So I had a couple of these sitting around, and I thought it would be perfect. So what I did is I took this cover, using the picture that I downloaded, I cut out the windows and rounded off the corners, because in the picture these were sharp corners and they weren't like that on the aircraft. And I cut out 2 templates. This hole here on the middle, for the middle window, is where the 50 caliber machine gun would stick out of. So I wanted that to be in place. So I put that there. And then again, 1 of each, 3 windows, 2 like this, 1 like that. So once I had the templates cut out, after I cut these out, I used some tape, glued them onto a piece of cardboard, took them outside to my spray booth, and sprayed them with some black spray paint. Actually, it was just black primer. But when you look, if I painted it on this side of the template, when you flip it over, it would be shiny because of the plastic, and that's what I was going for. I wanted to look like a window. Once they were cut out, painted, and dried, I then used some super glue to attach them to the laptop cover. And that's what we have. We glued them each in place. So you have an entire flat coated bomber here, and then the windows stand out because they're windows. They're glossy, so it stands out and gives it a nice effect, I think. To finish it all off, I used a little bit of brown paint and I made some dirt amongst the bullets, amongst the bombs here. To give it that look. Again, sprayed it all in dull coat to seal everything in. Then I put on the windows and we were done. And we have our tribute to the Ye Olde Pub, Charlie Brown and Franz Stiegler. If you haven't heard of their story before, I implore you to go check out the book, A Higher Call. It is one of the most incredible stories of World War II I'd ever read. I've been going on a kick reading a bunch of World War II stuff, and this one blew me away. I've actually gone through the book 3 times now since I got it in December. It is that incredible. It gives you a very different perspective of the war, especially when it comes to the Germans, the so-called enemy during this, depending on where you're from. But yeah, it's really cool. So, one other thing you'll note on the bomber, there was a swastika down here in this corner. Because of the climate of just because of the climate of today, people are so offended by the littlest things. The last thing I wanted to do is somebody get upset by seeing a swastika, even though it was a tribute to a far gone time. I just didn't want to have any problems, so I left that off because this is a functional laptop. I do use it at work, and of course, sitting in a boardroom or a lab with a whole bunch of people, and it should spark a lot of interest. And the one thing I didn't want to get was somebody offended because of the swastika. At some point when this laptop is retired for good and it just sits in my collection, I may put it back on there, because it's at that point I won't care who I offend. But for now, because of work and I still need my job, I decided to leave that off. So that's it. That is Ye Olde Pub. The laptop has now been renamed. This is the wallpaper from the front side that I see. Dedication to that crew and that time period, and chivalry. Prove that chivalry wasn't dead. Pretty cool. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this, and until next time, be strong.